What if the two children we've come to associate with royal titles and fairy tale lineage were never part of the bloodline at all? What if, after years of royal ceremonies, christenings, and global admiration, it all comes crashing down with just 5 chilling words from King Charles himself? They are not his children. It wasn't announced through a press release. It wasn't whispered through palace corridors. It came in the most unsettling and unorthodox way, through an unscripted, offhand comment captured during what should have been a routine private conversation. A comment that didn't just send a ripple through the monarchy. It set off an earthquake, the kind that splits families, ignites legal wars, and leaves centuries-old traditions dangling by a thread. For years, speculation has brewed. There were odd silences, evasive answers, conflicting timelines. Public curiosity turned to concern. Concern morphed into suspicion. And suspicion has now erupted into full-blown controversy as the man who sits on the British throne finally broke his silence. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This is not just another royal scandal. This is about identity, about legacy, about deception so carefully woven that it blurred even the sharpest royal minds. Because when the children in question are not just any children, but Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, the so-called bridges between two worlds, the American Hollywood dream and the centuries-old House of Windsor, truth becomes a volatile thing. To understand why this moment is so explosive, we have to go back, not to Frogmore Cottage or the Oprah interview, but to a time before Harry and Meghan even met. Because this isn't just a story of two people falling in love and leaving the royal family behind. It's a story of an institution fighting to preserve its bloodline while quietly tolerating narratives that may have never been rooted in truth to begin with. It all began with whispers, discreet mutterings behind closed palace doors, anonymous tips sent to tabloids that were quickly buried, royal aides caught exchanging glances during press briefings, and most damning of all, inconsistencies, those moments when the story didn't quite line up, like the delay in Archie's birth announcement. The carefully staged photos that never showed what royal watchers expected, the mysterious absence of medical documentation. And then, there was the visible discomfort of senior royals during public events, moments we all brushed off as formality or British stoicism. But now, in hindsight, they look like something far more telling. The British royal family has survived wars, abdications, divorces, and scandals, but nothing has struck at the very heart of its existence like this. Because this time, the controversy isn't about a love affair or a leaked phone call. It's about lineage, about whether the children at the heart of this drama were ever really part of the royal line, or simply borrowed symbols used to craft a narrative that served someone else's ambition. King Charles has long been known for his discretion. Even in the face of public pressure, even when tabloids painted him as cold or detached, he rarely spoke out. But insiders claim something shifted in recent months. A breaking point, a moment when silence became more dangerous than truth. It was during a private meeting, details of which have only recently come to light, that the monarch reportedly made the statement that would change everything. When asked about the future of the monarchy, and specifically about the place of Archie and Lilibet, King Charles allegedly paused and said, "They are not of our blood. They were never his to begin with." It was said calmly, almost sorrowfully, as if burdened by years of internal conflict. But make no mistake, those words were not empty. They cut to the very foundation of royal legitimacy. And once they were spoken, there was no taking them back. Some call it a betrayal. Others call it long overdue transparency. But everyone agrees, the impact is seismic. Not just for Prince Harry, whose world is now under the microscope more than ever. Not just for Meghan Markle, who has fought relentlessly to protect the public image of her children. But for the children themselves, Archie and Lilibet, whose identities, futures, and roles in history have just been thrown into question by the only man with the power to shape royal destiny. The implications are staggering. If Archie and Lilibet are not Prince Harry's biological children, then they are not in the line of succession. Their royal titles, if they were ever official, could be rescinded. Their protections? Revoked. Their inheritance? Disputed. And that's just the legal side. Emotionally, it rips open wounds the royal family has tried desperately to keep hidden. It forces uncomfortable questions about what Harry truly knew. and whether he was a participant in deception or its victim. And what of the public? A generation raised on the fairy tale of a rebel prince and his modern American bride is now faced with a possible fabrication more elaborate than anyone imagined. Millions watched their wedding. Millions rejoiced at the birth of their children. But now, those same millions are asking, were we lied to? This expose will take you deeper than headlines ever dared to go. We'll unravel the timeline, trace the inconsistencies, revisit the subtle clues missed along the way. We'll examine expert opinions, legal precedents, royal traditions, and the roles of the people closest to this firestorm. You'll see how the silence from Buckingham Palace wasn't apathy, it was calculation. How every staged photo, every omitted record, every closed curtain hinted at something more, something darker. As we explore how this revelation came to light, and why King Charles chose now to speak, you'll discover a tangled web of secrets, power plays, and emotional turmoil. Because when a king chooses to shatter the illusion, it is not done lightly. It is done with consequence. And behind the calm, curated smiles of royal portraits lie the fractured pieces of a truth so painful it was buried for years. But no secret stays buried forever. And now that the curtain has been pulled back, the palace walls are shaking. We are standing at a historic crossroads. For the royal family, for the public, for Harry, for Meghan, and most of all, for the two children who never asked to be born into this chaos, yet now find their very identities questioned on a global scale. Are they innocent victims? Are they symbolic tools? Or is there more to the story, more than even King Charles revealed? As we journey into the heart of this royal reckoning, ask yourself this: what defines a child's place in a family? Blood? Love? Legacy? Or truth? Because by the end of this story, the only thing more shocking than what has been exposed will be what has remained hidden. If you're ready to follow the trail from speculation to truth, if you're prepared to see what lies beneath the polished surface of royalty, then stay with us. What you're about to witness may change how you view the royal family forever. The palace has always been a place of guarded secrets, whispered conversations, and silent glances exchanged beneath the crown moldings of ancient halls. Its stone walls have witnessed everything, from clandestine romances and covert political pacts to bitter family betrayals that history books often skip over. Yet, none of those hushed scandals compare to the whispers that began circulating shortly after the arrival of baby Archie Harrison. At first, they were nothing more than murmurs. Faint, nervous chuckles between chambermaids, awkward silences during press briefings, or evasive responses from senior aides. But as time wore on, those whispers grew louder. And although no one dared speak them outright, their implication became impossible to ignore. Something about the story of Archie's birth didn't align with the traditions of the monarchy or even the most basic expectations of transparency from a royal family that, by all accounts, had welcomed new heirs into the world with ceremony and pride for generations. The first signal that something wasn't right didn't come from a scandalous tabloid headline. It came from within the palace itself, from the people who live, breathe, and serve the monarchy day in and day out. Sources close to the household, those who had lived through royal births before, from Prince William to Prince George, sensed the difference instantly. Where there had been celebration, there was now secrecy. Where there had been joyful announcements, there was calculated silence. It all began with the peculiar way the royal birth was announced, or rather, not announced. With past royal births, there had always been a certain protocol. The moment a child was born, there was a public statement from Buckingham Palace. A golden easel was placed outside. Reporters were informed. Crowds gathered. Photos were released. But with Archie, there was confusion from the very beginning. The birth was not immediately disclosed. Instead, the public was told after the fact, reportedly hours after Meghan had given birth. But that wasn't the part that raised eyebrows. The real tension came when journalists started asking questions about where exactly Meghan had delivered. At first, reports suggested that the couple had chosen a home birth at Frogmore Cottage. Then, almost abruptly, the narrative shifted. No, she had been rushed to a private London hospital. No confirmation, no medical statement, no visual proof of Meghan entering or leaving the facility. Nothing but inconsistencies and speculation. One royal aide, who later left the service citing personal conflict, reportedly confided to a close friend that during the entire lead-up to the birth, senior staff were kept in the dark about Meghan's plans. Not just out of privacy concerns, but from what this person believed was a deliberate attempt to bypass traditional procedures. There was no coordination, they said. It was like the Sussexes were trying to do everything off-script, and the palace had no choice but to follow their lead or risk another public rift. Still, the royal family has always been trained in the art of discretion. Just because there were internal doubts didn't mean they would ever become public knowledge. After all, loyalty to the crown runs deep, even when it's tested. But it wasn't just the palace insiders who sensed something was off. The press, too, began to notice subtle inconsistencies. The official birth certificate for Archie, for example, took longer to be released than normal. And when it did appear, it raised even more questions. Instead of listing Meghan as Princess of the United Kingdom, the customary designation, it initially listed her as Rachel Meghan Markle. That might seem trivial, but for royal observers, it was a red flag. A quiet rebellion against tradition. Or perhaps a legal necessity given circumstances the public hadn't yet grasped. Then came the matter of the post-birth photographs. Traditionally, royal parents emerge from the hospital to greet the public, flanked by smiling midwives and medical staff, the mother often holding the child wrapped in a white blanket. It's a moment of transparency, connection, and trust. But with Archie, that moment never came. Instead, Harry and Meghan posed for photos days later in Windsor Castle, away from the hospital, away from the public, away from scrutiny. The couple stated they were protecting their child's privacy, but others suspected it was more than that. Some insiders whispered that the delay in the photo release was due to something far more sensitive than privacy, a need to ensure the optics aligned perfectly with the narrative being constructed. Every detail of that brief photo op was scrutinized, the lighting, the positioning, even Meghan's posture. One palace source noted that Meghan's appearance was eerily composed for someone who had just given birth. There were no visible signs of postpartum strain, no hospital bracelet, no typical new mother fatigue. Just a perfectly styled duchess smiling beside a visibly anxious Prince Harry. It wasn't long before comparisons began to be drawn between Meghan's post-birth appearance and those of Kate Middleton. Kate had stepped out within hours of giving birth, pale but proud, embodying both elegance and vulnerability. But Meghan's debut felt like a carefully produced image. Something curated for a magazine spread, not a royal birth announcement. At the time, criticism of Meghan for not following tradition was dismissed as racist or unfair. And perhaps in many cases, it was. But what if those criticisms were rooted not in prejudice, but in a genuine observation that something didn't feel real? The murmurs only grew louder with the birth of Lilibet Diana. Again, there was confusion. No hospital photos. No witnesses. No formal statements from medical personnel. Just a simple announcement. By now, the palace seemed resigned to the Sussexes doing things their way. But behind the scenes, the whispers had grown into urgent concerns. Concerns not just about protocol, but about legitimacy. And yet, through it all, Buckingham Palace remained tight-lipped. King Charles, then still Prince of Wales, made no public comments. Queen Elizabeth offered only reserved congratulations. Prince William and Kate issued standard statements of support. But if you looked closely at official events during that time, something had shifted. Charles and William appeared increasingly tense when asked about Harry. The Queen seemed quieter, more reserved. And when asked about their new great-grandchildren, senior royals rarely spoke with the pride or warmth typically reserved for royal heirs. Behind closed doors, insiders alleged that DNA questions were already being whispered. That King Charles had quietly suggested the need for confirmation, not out of malice, but from a place of duty. That if Harry and Meghan's children were to be part of the royal succession, it was essential that all was as it appeared. But those inquiries reportedly went nowhere. Whether they were shut down by Harry, blocked by legal threats, or simply buried under the weight of family politics remains unclear. What is clear, however, is that silence reigned. Until now. In the wake of King Charles's recent comments, those early whispers take on a haunting clarity. The inconsistencies that once felt like tabloid gossip now look like puzzle pieces snapping into place. The silence from Buckingham Palace now feels less like discretion and more like quiet panic. and the lack of photographic or medical documentation now seems less like a couple's desire for privacy and more like a deliberate shield. No one knows how many people within the royal institution knew the full truth, if there even is one single truth. But the number of those who suspected it, that number is growing. In the chapters to come, we will examine what drove King Charles to break his silence, the moment the facade began to crumble, and the political and emotional implications of questioning the very bloodline of the modern royal family. But to fully understand where we are now, we must begin by accepting that it all started not with a declaration or a scandal, but with whispers. Whispers that grew into rumors. Rumors that grew into questions. And questions that now demand answers. The arrival of a royal baby is normally an event marked by a flurry of official announcements, coordinated photo sessions, and a wave of media coverage. Every detail, from the time of birth to the hospital wing, is meticulously documented and quickly shared with the public, ensuring transparency and reinforcing the legitimacy of the heir. But with Archie Harrison, something was decidedly different. Instead of a well-orchestrated rollout, there was silence, confusion, and a growing cloud of secrecy. In the days following Archie's birth, the world waited eagerly for official confirmation. The public expected the usual bulletin from Buckingham Palace, a joyous statement celebrating the addition to the royal family. Instead, there was a cryptic message from the Sussexes themselves, posted hours after the birth, on a personal Instagram account. A move unprecedented for royal births. It felt informal, almost defiant. This digital announcement left journalists and royal watchers scrambling. No palace spokespeople stepped forward. No press conferences were scheduled. The official royal website remained unchanged. The timing of the message raised eyebrows. Why the delay, and why bypass the palace entirely? Compounding the mystery was the question of the birth location. Traditionally, royal births have taken place in prestigious hospitals, often London's St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington, where multiple generations of royals have been born. For Archie, initial reports suggested Frogmore Cottage, Harry and Meghan's residence, but that was soon contradicted by rumors of a hospital birth in an undisclosed London facility. Yet no photographic evidence emerged to support either claim. The absence of hospital arrival or departure photos was glaring. Every previous royal birth had been documented with the mother leaving the hospital in public view, sometimes held by aides, surrounded by medical staff and reporters. These images serve not only to reassure the public of the mother's health, but also to affirm the legitimacy of the child's birth circumstances. With Archie, the public never saw this moment. Journalists made inquiries. The hospital refused to confirm or deny Meghan's presence, citing privacy laws. Buckingham Palace remained silent. Even close royal insiders were left in the dark, unable to offer definitive answers. This blanket of secrecy fueled speculation. Was there an attempt to keep details hidden because of something controversial? The intrigue deepened when news of the birth certificate's release was delayed. Birth certificates are public documents in the UK, though often private royals use discretion. In Archie's case, the certificate was withheld for weeks longer than normal. When it finally surfaced, it sparked debate among royal watchers for its atypical details. The certificate listed Meghan Markle as Rachel Meghan Markle instead of a royal title, which was understandable since she was a commoner. However, the document also listed the place of birth as London, without specifying the hospital, an uncommon omission for royal births. Furthermore, the document's registrant was an unidentified individual, a departure from standard practice where one or both parents are usually registered. This lack of transparency sent shockwaves through the media and raised questions about whether the birth had even taken place in the United Kingdom or if it had been registered under special circumstances to avoid public scrutiny. As reporters dug deeper, they uncovered a pattern of media blackouts around the Sussex family. Requests for interviews were denied. Press conferences were cancelled. Paparazzi were kept at bay with legal threats. It was as if an invisible wall had been erected between Harry, Meghan, and the press. This created a vacuum where rumors thrived. Tabloid journalists speculated wildly, ranging from the idea that Archie was born via surrogacy to conspiracy theories about secret adoptions or even that the child was not Harry's biological offspring. While some of these theories were outrageous, others gained traction because of the absence of concrete evidence. The Sussex camp responded with a mixture of legal warnings and carefully crafted media appearances, attempting to control the narrative. Meghan, in particular, portrayed herself as a victim of invasive media scrutiny, claiming that privacy was paramount for the well-being of her child. This plea resonated with many, shielding them from skepticism. But critics argued that the opacity only fueled suspicion. They pointed to the absence of hospital photos, the delayed birth certificate, and the unusual wording on official documents as signs of a deliberate attempt to hide something. One anonymous royal source, speaking under condition of anonymity, revealed that even senior palace staff were puzzled and frustrated by the lack of information. According to this source, the Sussexes operated independently of the traditional palace machinery, refusing to adhere to royal protocols around births and public announcements. This autonomous approach created confusion and a breakdown in trust. The media blackout extended beyond Archie's birth to the arrival of Lilibet Diana 2 years later. Again, there were no hospital photographs, no official press release from Buckingham Palace, and scant details on the birth circumstances. The public learned of Lilibet's birth from a brief Instagram announcement, further bypassing royal communication channels. The lack of transparency was unprecedented. It shattered expectations about royal protocol and fueled more speculation. The timing was particularly sensitive, given the Sussexes' ongoing rift with the royal family and their decision to step back from royal duties. One investigative journalist who covered the royal family for over a decade commented, "The silence and secrecy surrounding these births is like nothing I've seen before. Usually, even the most private royal moments are shared with the public in some form to maintain legitimacy and public trust. Here, we have intentional withholding of basic information, and that's rare." Legal experts weighed in on the matter as well. The way the birth certificates were handled, the ambiguity surrounding the hospitals, and the lack of official royal confirmation raised questions about compliance with British law. Normally, births must be registered with the local registrar within 42 days, but the specifics of how these registrations were made, and under what names, added layers of complexity. Some speculated that the Sussexes might have exploited legal loopholes by registering births outside the country or under pseudonyms to shield the children's identities. Others theorized the possibility of surrogacy arrangements that complicated the standard documentation process. The media blackout wasn't just about birth details. It extended into the children's public appearances and official roles. Unlike other royal children, Archie and Lilibet were rarely seen in public. Their appearances were limited, staged, and tightly controlled. Public relations strategies aimed to present them as private individuals rather than heirs to the throne, further blurring their status within the royal family. The Sussexes' deliberate distancing from royal traditions fueled rumors that Archie and Lilibet were borrowed children, symbols rather than blood heirs, placed to solidify Meghan's position or to craft a certain narrative. Though unconfirmed at the time, these ideas have gained renewed attention following King Charles's recent statements. This media blackout and the missing birth records represent more than just an attempt to protect privacy. They highlight an ongoing struggle between a modern royal family grappling with tradition and a new generation challenging the very foundations of monarchy. As we move forward, these gaps in transparency will be pivotal. They form the backdrop against which King Charles's revelation must be understood. Because when a monarch points to missing truths and then speaks openly about borrowed kids, it forces us to question everything we thought was certain. The birth of Archie Harrison stirred whispers that extended beyond the usual royal intrigue. Among these murmurs, one theory began to take shape with increasing frequency and intensity: the possibility that Archie, and later, Lilibet Diana, were born through surrogacy. This wasn't just idle speculation among tabloid writers. It became a recurring theme discussed quietly among royal insiders, legal experts, and media analysts alike. Surrogacy itself is a complicated and often controversial subject, especially when connected to the British royal family, whose very identity is steeped in tradition and lineage. The question wasn't merely about how these children came into the world, but about what their existence meant for the unbroken chain of royal bloodline, a chain that dates back over 1,000 years. To understand why the surrogacy theory gained traction, we must first explore the biological and cultural context surrounding royal births. Historically, heirs to the throne were expected to be direct biological descendants of reigning monarchs or their immediate family members. The legitimacy of succession is not only a legal matter, but also one tied deeply to public perception and the continuity of national identity. Yet, surrogacy has become increasingly common in the 21st century, especially among high-profile individuals who face medical challenges or privacy concerns. Several celebrities have openly chosen surrogacy as a path to parenthood, making the practice less taboo. However, within the monarchy, surrogacy remains a gray area, officially neither endorsed nor condemned, but certainly not embraced as part of royal protocol. When Meghan Markle announced her pregnancies, many observers celebrated the modernity she seemed to bring to the royal family. But subtle clues began to surface that raised questions. One of the earliest was the unusual timelines of her pregnancies as observed during public appearances. Attentive royal watchers noted that Meghan appeared to be pregnant for longer than typical gestational periods, or alternatively, displayed fluctuating physical signs inconsistent with a single, straightforward pregnancy. Moreover, Meghan's well-documented struggles with health issues and her high-profile legal battles created an environment where traditional scrutiny was complicated by genuine concern for her well-being. Supporters argued that any speculation about surrogacy was invasive and inappropriate, framing it as an attack on her privacy. Nonetheless, the ambiguity persisted. Anonymous sources close to the palace began to suggest that the Sussexes had explored surrogacy options in the United States, where laws are more permissive and privacy protections for surrogates are stringent. This aligned with rumors that Archie may not have been born in the United Kingdom at all, but rather in a discreet location abroad. Several legal experts specializing in surrogacy and international adoption weighed in on the feasibility of such an arrangement for the Sussexes. They noted that surrogacy contracts in the United States are confidential and binding, making verification difficult without consent from the involved parties. Additionally, the transfer of parental rights, especially for international clients, involves complex legal steps that could explain the unusual delays and secrecy surrounding Archie's birth registration. A further element fueling speculation was the dramatic shift in public appearances of the children. Unlike previous royal babies who were paraded before the cameras, Archie and Lilibet remained largely shielded from the spotlight. This was interpreted by some as consistent with the protection of surrogate children, who are often kept private to safeguard their anonymity. Skeptics of the surrogacy theory argued that these observations were circumstantial and lacked concrete proof. They pointed out that Meghan's own accounts of her pregnancies, medical updates, and the testimonies of her close allies supported the natural birth narrative. Yet, the persistent absence of definitive medical documentation and the guarded responses from both the Sussex camp and Buckingham Palace left a vacuum where doubt could thrive. One particularly intriguing detail was a reported encounter between a senior royal official and a trusted medical professional within the palace. According to the source, the official expressed concern that surrogacy would complicate the line of succession and warned that it could open a Pandora's box if the truth were ever revealed. The medical professional allegedly responded cautiously, indicating that while surrogacy was not officially acknowledged, the medical records for Archie and Lilibet were unusually sparse and lacked standard indicators expected in royal births. Legal advisors also noted that surrogacy could legally disqualify children from certain royal privileges, especially if the biological parents did not match the line of succession. This legal ambiguity posed a significant risk to the monarchy's image and future stability. Adding further complexity, a handful of insiders hinted that the surrogates, if they existed, might be anonymous donors with contracts binding them to lifelong confidentiality. Such arrangements are common in high-profile surrogacy cases, ensuring the child's privacy but also complicating public acknowledgement. The surrogacy theory gained even more attention after the publication of a leaked royal internal memo. The document reportedly advised staff to manage questions about the children's birth with extreme care and to maintain a consistent narrative that protects family unity and public confidence. This memo was interpreted by many as an attempt to cover up surrogacy rumors rather than address them openly. Critically, The surrogacy theory also intersected with the long-standing feud between Prince Harry and the royal establishment. Some viewed the secrecy as part of a broader battle over control and narrative. Others suggested that Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from royal duties and relocate to the United States was partly motivated by a desire to shield the children from relentless scrutiny over their origins. The media's treatment of the Sussexes' private lives added fuel to the fire. Stories alternated between sympathetic portrayals of Meghan's struggles with mental health and accusations of deceit and manipulation. Social media became a battleground, with supporters and detractors fiercely debating the surrogacy claims. Amidst the noise, the voice of King Charles remained silent for years. But those closest to the monarchy understood the tensions simmering beneath the surface. The possibility of surrogacy challenged the fundamental principles upon which the royal family is built. It forced the institution to confront a modern reality where traditional bloodlines might no longer be clear or uncontested. When King Charles finally spoke, his words about Archie and Lilibet being borrowed kids were interpreted by many as a veiled acknowledgement of the surrogacy rumors that had long circulated in the shadows. Whether he intended it as a condemnation, a lament, or a strategic disclosure is still debated. But one thing was certain. The surrogacy theory was no longer confined to whispers. It had entered the realm of royal fact, or at least royal admission. As this chapter closes, the surrogacy theory stands as one of the most profound challenges to the monarchy's future. It forces us to ask, in an era of evolving family structures, can the royal family maintain its centuries-old traditions without adaptation? And what does it mean for the children caught at the center of this storm, whose very existence has become a question of legitimacy and identity? We will continue exploring these themes in the next chapter, delving into Meghan Markle's role in controlling the public narrative during these pregnancies and the pressures that shaped the unfolding story. From the moment Meghan Markle stepped onto the royal stage, it was clear that her approach to public life was unlike any we had seen before in the British monarchy. A former Hollywood actress, she was no stranger to the camera or to crafting narratives that controlled perception. Yet, what followed after her engagement and marriage to Prince Harry was a meticulous and sometimes controversial campaign to manage her image, and by extension, the image of her children. Meghan's pregnancy announcements and subsequent appearances were carefully curated events designed to shape public opinion, protect privacy, and, some would argue, obfuscate deeper truths. Each public outing was analyzed by the media and the public alike, with every gesture, outfit choice, and statement dissected for clues about her health, her relationship with the royal family, and, most crucially, the legitimacy of her pregnancies. It's important to recognize that Meghan faced unprecedented pressures. She was entering a family steeped in tradition and public scrutiny, often facing overt and covert racism, and navigating a complex and sometimes hostile British press. To many, her guarded approach was a necessary defense mechanism, but the level of control extended well beyond mere self-protection. From the timing of announcements to the venues selected for appearances, Meghan appeared to orchestrate her public image with surgical precision. For example, unlike previous royal pregnancies where the expectant mother's baby bump was proudly displayed in natural, candid moments, Meghan's pregnancies were marked by a series of highly controlled photo ops. These were often indoors, with carefully selected backdrops and lighting, designed to flatter and project a composed, confident persona. There was little room for spontaneous moments or unguarded vulnerability. This orchestration led to widespread speculation. Observers noted that Meghan sometimes appeared to have an inconsistent belly size between appearances, fueling rumors about the authenticity of her pregnancies. While such observations could be dismissed as natural variations or camera angles, their recurrence in public discourse fed into broader narratives questioning the truth of the Sussexes' story. Moreover, Meghan's close-knit team of public relations experts was renowned for its aggressive management style. Leaks were swiftly denied, critical stories were countered with legal threats, and the Duchess herself became increasingly vocal about the need to protect her family's privacy. This created a tension. While Meghan publicly advocated for openness about her mental health struggles and experiences with racism, she simultaneously clamped down on any information that might invite scrutiny of her family's private affairs. One former palace insider recounted that Meghan's team operated almost like a corporate PR agency rather than part of a traditional royal household. They employed strategies common in Hollywood, including controlling the narrative through select interviews, social media messaging, and calculated public appearances. This approach sometimes clashed with royal protocol, which typically emphasizes a more measured and collective communication style. The famous interview with Oprah Winfrey in early 2021 exemplified this duality. On one hand, it was a groundbreaking moment where Meghan and Harry spoke openly about their struggles, mental health, and experiences of racism within the royal family. On the other hand, it carefully omitted or deflected specific questions about the children's births and lineage, leaving many viewers wanting answers that were never provided. In the months and years following, Meghan's image evolved into that of a modern woman navigating royal life on her own terms. This empowered narrative resonated with many, especially younger generations and global audiences. However, it also created an aura of mystery, as certain details, especially those related to her children, remained closely guarded. Even within the royal family, there was reportedly frustration over Meghan's tight control of information. Sources revealed that attempts to share updates or photographs of the children for official purposes were sometimes resisted. This made it difficult for palace staff to perform routine duties and added layers of complexity to an already strained family dynamic. The juxtaposition between Meghan's public vulnerability and private control added to the public's fascination and skepticism. It fueled a media environment where fans championed her as a victim of systemic bias, while critics painted her as manipulative and secretive. Interestingly, this controlled narrative also intersected with Meghan's efforts to forge her own identity outside of the royal mold. Her focus on charitable work, social justice causes, and her production company showcased a woman intent on defining her legacy on her terms. Yet, in the eyes of many, this came at the cost of transparency within her most private realm, her family. The intense management of her image also extended to the children. Archie and Lilibet were kept largely away from public view, with appearances limited to highly staged events. The Sussexes insisted on privacy, but critics saw this as a shield against questions about their children's origins. Some royal experts argue that Meghan's approach was a calculated attempt to protect her children from the harsh glare of royal life, especially given the turbulent history of Prince Harry's mother, Princess Diana. Others suggest it was a deliberate strategy to create distance from the traditional monarchy and control the narrative about her family. Names carry immense power. They convey identity, heritage, and intention. Within royal circles, naming a child is never a casual act. It's a declaration, a message, a bridge between past and future. When Meghan and Harry announced the name of their daughter, Lilibet Diana, the world took notice. It was a name heavy with history, symbolism, and, as it would soon emerge, controversy. The name Lilibet holds a special place in the British monarchy. It was Queen Elizabeth II's childhood nickname, a term of endearment used by close family members. To use it for a great-grandchild is to evoke closeness, affection, and an intimate bond with the late queen. The middle name, Diana, similarly carried profound significance, honoring Harry's mother and her enduring legacy. At first glance, the name seemed a heartfelt tribute, a blending of family love and remembrance. But beneath the surface, it stirred tensions within the royal household and among public observers. Reports suggest that the queen herself was blindsided by the choice. Traditionally, royal baby names are shared with senior family members before public announcement, particularly when they bear the names of reigning monarchs or beloved predecessors. This protocol serves both as a sign of respect and as a way to prepare the family and public for the significance attached to the name. In the case of Lilibet Diana, sources reveal that the Sussexes bypassed this customary step, announcing the name publicly without prior consultation with Buckingham Palace. The move was seen by some as a deliberate assertion of independence, an act that broke with centuries of royal tradition. Within the palace, the choice was met with mixed reactions. For some, it was a touching homage. For others, it was perceived as a strategic move to claim legitimacy and royal favor, especially given the controversies surrounding Archie and Lilibet's origins. One insider described the naming as a calculated symbolic gesture, By invoking the Queen's nickname, the Sussexes appeared to assert a close personal connection to the monarch, attempting to embed their daughter within the royal lineage despite lingering questions about her parentage. The name Diana, long used by royal descendants, carried its own weight. Harry's public speeches and interviews frequently referenced his mother, framing Lilibet's name as a continuation of Diana's spirit and values. This resonated with many in the public, who admired the late princess and saw the name as a hopeful sign of continuity. However, the naming also sparked a subtle power struggle. Some senior royals reportedly viewed the choice as a political statement, a challenge to the establishment and an assertion of control over the narrative surrounding the Sussex family. This dynamic was further complicated by media portrayals. The press spotlighted the name's significance, fueling both admiration and criticism. Supporters praised the tribute. Detractors questioned its sincerity and timing, especially given the surrounding controversies. Public reactions mirrored this divide. Many were touched by the emotional resonance of the name, while others saw it as an attempt to garner sympathy or deflect attention from more pressing issues, such as the ongoing questions about the children's origins. In addition to symbolic meaning, the name had practical implications. In royal tradition, names can influence titles, succession rights, and public perceptions. By naming their daughter Lilibet, Meghan and Harry seemed to stake a claim to royal identity, emphasizing their connection to the crown. Yet, this claim was complicated by King Charles's recent statements casting doubt on the children's status. The naming controversy thus became intertwined with questions about legitimacy, belonging, and the Sussexes' place within the royal family. Legal experts note that while names do not confer legal rights, they do influence public perception and can affect the way children are integrated into royal protocol. The choice of such a charged name thus carried layers of meaning beyond the personal. The episode highlights the broader tension between tradition and modernity that has characterized the Sussexes' time in the royal spotlight. It underscores how deeply personal decisions, like naming a child, can become politicized within the context of royalty. Moreover, it illustrates how the Sussexes used symbolism and narrative control to assert their identity amid scrutiny and division. As this chapter closes, it is clear that the naming of Lilibet Diana was more than a loving tribute. It was a statement laden with intention, strategy, and the desire for recognition. In the next chapter, we will recount the private confrontation between King Charles and Prince Harry, a pivotal moment filled with emotion, accusation, and the weight of family legacy. Behind the grandeur of royal events and the carefully crafted public image lies a family marked by raw, complex emotions, love, disappointment, anger, and longing. Few moments capture this turbulent mix more than the reported private confrontation between King Charles and Prince Harry, a meeting that insiders say was both heartbreaking and pivotal in the unfolding saga of Archie and Lilibet's true identity. The setting was said to be a discreet room within Buckingham Palace, far from the prying eyes of the media and courtiers. According to sources close to the family, tensions had been simmering for months as rumors about the children's parentage continued to swirl and public pressure mounted. Charles, torn between his role as monarch and his responsibilities as a father and grandfather, demanded a frank conversation with his son. What followed was reportedly a tense exchange, marked by emotional outbursts, deep frustrations, and unspoken grief. Charles is said to have confronted Harry directly, expressing his concerns about the rumors and inconsistencies that threatened to undermine the monarchy's stability. "Why won't you be honest about the children?" Charles allegedly asked. "They are our future. We need certainty." Harry, according to insiders, responded with a mixture of defensiveness and sorrow. He insisted that his children were his in every way that mattered, that biology was not the sole measure of fatherhood. He accused the palace of attempting to control and manipulate his family's narrative, asserting his and Meghan's right to privacy and autonomy. The confrontation reportedly grew heated, with Charles expressing feelings of betrayal, not just as a monarch, but as a father who felt sidelined and kept in the dark. Harry, meanwhile, expressed anger over what he perceived as the palace's lack of support during his and Meghan's struggles. Despite the tension, sources suggest that the meeting ended without resolution, a fragile truce rather than reconciliation. Both men were left emotionally raw, aware that the rift between them, and by extension, the royal family, was widening. This confrontation was kept strictly confidential, with only a handful of insiders aware of its details. Its emergence into public discourse only occurred after King Charles's recent admission about the children's borrowed status, shedding new light on the private struggles behind closed doors. For many observers, this meeting symbolizes the collision between tradition and modernity, between duty and personal truth. It exposes the challenges of maintaining family unity under the relentless gaze of the public and media. The emotional stakes are high. On one side stands a monarch determined to preserve centuries of lineage and protocol. On the other, a father fiercely protective of his family's privacy and identity in a rapidly changing world. This confrontation also highlights the human cost of royal life, the sacrifices, misunderstandings, and painful divisions that play out far from the cameras. As this chapter closes, the unresolved tensions between Charles and Harry remind us that behind the headlines are real people grappling with loss, love, and legacy.